G'day, my name is Wilfred West from Loch Sport, Victoria, Australia. Today's date is the 10th of the 4th, 2015, and the time is 21 to 10 in the morning, and it's 13 degrees outside. I'm going to go for a quick drive down to the bakery, then the surf beach, and then we'll have a quick drive around Loch Sport. Like today's a bit overcast, but it's sunny at the same time, and the sun's quite warm. Okay. Well, I hope you like this video, and if so, please subscribe.
So it's all it takes at Augusta. The green's quite slick and fast as usual. The day belonged, though, to 21-year-old American Jordan Spieth, who is the outright leader at 8 under par, a stunning round of 64, just a shot off the course record. He's the youngest player to have led the Masters after the opening round. No real surprises, though, to those who watched him at the Australian Open at the last tournament, because he was a runaway leader there, and he shows all the makings of a golf in the making, a golfing great. So there's still plenty of work to do, though, for Spieth. It is only round one, but a wonderful start for him. Adam Scott had an even par today. Tiger Woods was 1 over. A great round for John Senden. He's at -2. Phil Mickelson's at -2 as well. And Jeff Ogilvy, an up and down day for Ogilvy. He is at +2, but well and truly inside the cut on his return to the Masters. And Antonio Medaka has finished at +6 in his first ever experience of Augusta National. Sydney's one's defender Ted Richards says it's been a long road getting to his 200th club match. 32-year-old will line up for Sydney when it takes on Port Adelaide in Adelaide on Saturday. Richards made his move for the Bombers in 2002 and has gone on to become a regular with the Swans.
It took me 5 years to get to pre-game first, and you know, it's been a real roller coaster thinking of the Swans. And fortunately enough, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been able to play consistently.
In rugby league, the Broncos will be missing Justin Hodges and Adam Blair for tonight's home game against the Sydney Roosters. Blair has a cork thigh, while Hodges is recovering from his latest hamstring injury. Wayne Bennett says Hodges trained yesterday, but they don't want to take any chances.
Yeah, well, I hope the boys start to run now. For the other day running, so I'm expecting the next one.
And finally, in surfing, Mick Fanning has moved to world #1 in the rankings after winning a record-equaling 4th World Leagues title. He beat Brazil's Adriano de Souza in a comeback in the final yesterday. The pair were tied after the final, but the Australian claimed the crown on the strength of his best single-wave score.
Well, I think there is a chance. These things take time. I don't think the free TV proposal will get up because, frankly, it's just so ridiculous. But I do think there is a chance over time. We're seeing more and more concern in the community about the exposure of kids to alcohol promotion and this loophole that allows promotion through sport. Anybody watching sport is just swamped by alcohol advertising. Free TV say that only a few kids are exposed to seeing alcohol ads and watching at those times, but the OzTap data show that literally hundreds of thousands of kids are being exposed at those times. So I think there is major community concern. I think that we will, over the coming years, see some strengthening of those curves, so that particularly we see a phasing out of alcohol sponsorship in sport, which has been that sort of end of alcohol sponsorship in sport has been recommended by expert body after expert body. You know, Kate, we have to remember that alcohol causes enormous harms in the community, not just the direct harms that people see and hear about, violence, road crashes, all that kind of thing, but harm to children, harms to the developing brain. And when you have a problem of that nature, it's simply irresponsible to allow alcohol to be heavily promoted, especially in association with top sports people and kids idolise.
But just briefly, Professor, what kind of hard data have you got that advertising actually has is directly linked to more consumption?
Well, there is very traffic lights are still working. I'm Paul Latter for ABC News Radio Traffic in half an hour.
Thanks very much, Paul. Coming up to 8 o'clock in Western Australia, in Northern Territory and South Australia 9:30, and in the East 10 o'clock. ABC News Radio. Making news, the man known internationally as the voice of Australian cricket, Richie Benaud, has died overnight at the age of 84. A former Australian captain, Benaud was also deeply respected around the world as a commentator, as Patrick Galloway reports.
One of Australia's most innovative and successful skippers, Richie Benaud, was taught to bowl by his leg-spinning father Lou, and after making his debut in 1952, Benaud played 63 tests.
The Force face the Cheetahs, and the Bulls are at home to the Queensland Reds.
Tim Gable. Checking the weather for you this Friday, April the 10th, around the country. Let's start in Brisbane, a mostly sunny day. The chance of a shower should make it to 27. It's 22.6. In Sydney, a shower or two about, a top of 22, currently 17.5. Melbourne, it's 15 degrees, a sunny day and a high of 20 expected. In Hobart, partly cloudy today, a high of 16. It's 11.8. In Adelaide, a mostly sunny day, should get to 21. It's 15.9 at the moment. For Perth, a shower or two about, a high of 25, currently 21.9. And in the top end, in Darwin, it's 27.7 at the moment. A sunny day, a warm one, high of 32. Benaud left a huge impression on virtually every Australian.
Our nation has lost an icon. Richie Benaud passed away overnight. Richie Benaud has been the voice of cricket. There would be very based on Bradman, and for that reason I'm pleased to have offered the Benno family a state funeral. But this is a sad day for everyone who loves cricket, and it's a sad day for everyone who has felt that Richie Benno is a part of his or her life.
Prime Minister Tony Abbott speaking from Brisbane a short time ago. Meantime, sports writer Gideon Haig says Benno's death marks the end of an era for cricket.
We've been living in the Benno era, with all of us. Been brought up in an era where he was a player or a commentator or a guru or an influence on the game. I'm very sad to make his passing. We've known that Richie's been unwell for a prolonged period. We've been preparing ourselves for this moment, but it's an unpleasant and unsalutary reality. What are your first recollections of
that kangaroo?
Well, I'm not old enough to have seen him play, and in fact, the vast majority of his audience wouldn't recall that he was a player.
Have a look at this beautiful one. Oh wow. You stand there and look at me. Looks really good in the grass like that. And there's two more over there I can see. So he's probably happy there with his little family. And there's at least 5 I saw. I quickly drove past them, but at least I saw 5 there. Might drive. Oh, wow. Anyway, well, we'll keep driving, shall we? They just stood up there. The car came past, they stood up, he's jumped off. They go, oh, well, where'd the car come from? Oh, well, we'll head off. Yeah. They're beautiful.
Of a game, on the personality of a player, on the importance of an occasion, which is what he'd done as a player, and that's why television, I think, particularly suited him. He was also an accomplished writer on the game. I mean, he started off being a cricket columnist in the 1950s. He wrote for the News of the World in England for more than 40 years, but I think television was his true métier. He connects us to the earliest days of cricketing broadcasting. You know, he was trained by the BBC in 1956, and one of the cardinal rules of cricket broadcasting in those days, passed on by a man called
Choice says it'll be challenging for the government to actually collect the tax. Peter Donald has our report.
The Treasurer, Joe Hockey, has goods and services bought over the internet in his sights. He has agreement from state and territory leaders that the 10% GST should apply to downloaded movies and music.
So a company providing intangible services into Australia, such as media services and so on, wherever they are located, they should charge GST on those services. So there's some obvious ones in recent times engaged in that. There are a number of those companies that are prepared to charge GST on the services that they're giving to Australia. They want to know that they're not going to get disadvantage. The states agree principle that we should move in that regard.
I think that most consumers will actually have to think about it would be that it's fair enough that for every country to buy something, you should pay the most for a tax that pays the most all of our services. So the question about the change in GST will always be, can the government actually collect the GST in a way that's efficient and actually raise more revenue that it costs to collect?
Alan Kirkwood is the CEO of the consumer group Choice. He says it won't be hard for the government to collect the GST for material downloaded in Australia, but the challenge will be consumers effectively buy the downloads in other countries using a VPN or virtual private network.
Due to the exorbitant prices that we pay for movies and TV shows and music in Australia, many consumers are turning to overseas services. Of course, often they do that in order to get access to things that aren't available in Australia as well. And away from that, virtual private network that essentially makes you look like you're converting the internet in the US rather than Australia, which means you can get access to US services like the American version of Netflix.
Therefore, you don't pay the GST.
When that occurs, it's much harder for the government to apply the GST because, as I understand it, the proposed technology would be based on services like Netflix, but it's interesting where the customer is from. Because it's like they're from the US, then it's unlikely that they would pay the GST.
Alan Kirkwood says what the government really needs to do is to deal with the root causes of people downloading material overseas.
The root causes are that people are turning to overseas services because movies, TV shows, and music are fast in Australia. They're on the mainland, it's making it easier to access to overseas in order to much greater competition in the Australian market.
Peter Donald in that report. We'll have more on that story for you in the next hour here on ABC News Radio. We'll speak to Richard Dennis from the Australia Institute. Well, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is urging warring parties in Syria to cooperate in order to combat the Islamic State group. Moscow's latest attempt to bring together government and opposition leaders comes amid continuing strikes by the US-led coalition against the Muslim group. Al Jazeera's Rory Challand has more on the immediate health consequences.
Now, for the first 2 days of these 4-day talks, it was just the opposition groups here discussing things amongst themselves. The government's representative, Bashar al-Assad, only turned up on Wednesday. When he did, he was handed a document which had been formulated by the opposition groups. And this document includes things like discussions of humanitarian issues and what they call the fight against terrorism. What we believe it doesn't discuss is the fate of Bashar al-Assad, Syria's leader. That is important because remember, the Syrian National Coalition, the main opposition group in Syria, has been boycotting it. It sees the removal of Bashar al-Assad as the main precondition for any kind of negotiation. But the landscape for Syria's opposition groups has shifted considerably since the war began 5 years ago. Recently we've seen the rise of Islamic State, and this has replaced Bashar al-Assad as the main bogeyman in the region for Western governments. So we have detected a noticeable softening in the kind of language that the United States has been using when it talks about Bashar al-Assad. The other thing that's happened, of course, is the nuclear deal with Iran. When sanctions are lifted against Iran, this will allow Iran to operate more freely as a regional power, supporting its allies. One of those allies is Bashar al-Assad. So what's good for Bashar al-Assad is, of course, bad for Syria's opposition.
Al Jazeera's Rory Challand in Moscow now with a check of the nation's roads. Paul Lack from the Australian
Thanks, Kate. We've had a number of crashes in the past 15 to 20 minutes in Brisbane at Chandler, Old Cleveland Road and Holland Street. That's along Nelson Road, the approaching into the CBD after the truck fire. But if you're going past that, Monash, eastbound, Burke Road, and around High Street, there's some tree trimming being done. So if you're heading out of town via the southeast, you're going to find some very slow traffic. At North Melbourne, Reckland Street, Flemington, are also a crash. Hobart's clear, Adelaide's okay. Peacock's come and gone without too many dramas, and looking towards Perth despite the conditions. We still have a sluggish run on the Mitchell, but no incident. Carrying Road to Vincent Street. The Gwinnett Freeway, it's busy and heavy, but it's okay. Northbridge Tunnel likewise. I'm Paul Latter for ABC News Radio Traffic in half an hour.
And many thanks to you. It's now coming up to 8:30. It is 8:30 in Western Australia, in the Northern Territory 10 o'clock, and Eastern Standard Time is 10:30.
ABC News Radio.
It's been a privilege to go into everyone's living room throughout that time. What's even better, it's been a great deal of fun.
The death of Australian cricket great Richie Benaud leads this bulletin of ABC News. Cricketing legend Richie Benaud has died in his sleep overnight. The Test cricket all-rounder helped restore Australia to the top of world cricket in the late 1950s and early 1960s. In 1958, he became Australia's Test captain until his retirement in 1964. He then went on to become a...
My name's Wilfred West from Loch Sport, Victoria, Australia, signing off. Thank you for watching my videos, and all comments are welcome. You all have a great day now.